Today we have Baljinder Kaur Ji, who has come to Leicester to do a talk on home education. Benji has Benji there. Eldest is 12, youngest is 3. So and Benji has never sent her children to school. She has always home educated. And we're quite lucky to have Benji here to come and talk. We also home educate. This is our 2nd year. And before we home educated, we joined a Sikh WhatsApp group that Benji had set up. So before we had fully decided to home educate, we spoke to Benji. There was a group, a WhatsApp call, and that really cleared any of the doubts that we had. And then from then on, we're still going strong. So I will pass the mic.
Education still has to be considered full-time and suitable for your child in terms of age, ability and aptitude. If your child is already enrolled in school, they must be formally deregistered, which means sending a letter into the school and saying, I want to now deregister my child, I want to teach them at home. And the teachers or the head teacher of that school has to take your lead on that, because ultimately, as the law currently stands, you have the right and duty to choose how you educate your children. So over the last, since 2010, home education in the UK has increased fivefold. There was a massive increase through the COVID years when people got a taste of home education and saw real life changes in their children and their development, and they wanted to carry that on. And they saw the difference that it made them not having to go to school every day. And from our own experience, we've seen a dramatic increase in Sikh families home educating as well. That's one of the main reasons we decided to set up the community that we have called Family of Sikhs, is to help other families that are also considering home education. Because when we first started out, there was absolutely nothing, and the people that we did do, although they understand home education, didn't understand Sikhi. So it was nice to be able to create a community where both those things come together, and we can help the community going forward. So this rise is telling us that there's a major shift in how parents are seeing their role and education. It isn't just a trend. So let's talk about what leads parents to make the decision to home educate. So these are just some of the reasons that I'm going to touch on very lightly, but each of them run quite deep. So the first one being mental health concerns, from anxiety to depression. And I'm aware that phones and social media can contribute to that as well, but that is exacerbated by school. Bullying and identity struggles, they're also rife in schools. They're something that almost these days everyone experiences to some degree or another, to the point now where self-harm in schools, in your average high school, is considered normal. If you speak to a doctor or a high school teacher, and especially for teenage girls, and you're discussing self-harm, it's seen as something normal, and that happens quite regularly. It's not something that's abnormal anymore, which to me I find absolutely shocking. There's peer pressure and conformity. So even if you as a parent, for example, don't want your children to have social media or a phone, there's not much you can really do about it if your children are going to school and everyone there has a mobile phone and the teachers are setting homework, which is also on apps on mobile phones. There is only so much that a parent can withstand that and push back against it before you also feel like you have to conform with the other parents and children have to conform with the other children, and you end up falling in line. Also, as part of the conformity, there are certain ideologies that are being pushed onto our children that aren't necessarily compatible with Sikhi. So loss of culture and spiritual connection. For me, this is a really big one, because I think that we all understand that children from the age of 1 to 5 go through major developmental changes. So from being a tiny little baby to being 5 years old, we see so much change in our children. But what we don't know is when a child goes between the ages of like a tween to a teen, late teens, they also go through a major developmental change, not just physically, not just neurologically or developmentally, but they go through an actual process where synapses in their brain, they go through a phase called synapse pruning. So whatever the child's brain is using the most, the knowledge they are using the most, that those synapses will be stronger, they will get stronger, and they will grow. And the things they are not using will get weaker and weaker, and they will stop being active in a sense. And it's during that time and that time period that a child in the teenage years, especially when they're going through puberty and then onwards, that they really start to question who they are. What is my identity? Why am I here? Surely my life can't be just, waking up, going to school, doing my homework and coming back. I feel like there's more to life, there's something more. And even if they're not home educated, they have the same questions at that same developmental age. And it's at that time the child has a real opportunity to flourish spiritually, to understand that deep feeling that they are feeling at that time is like a missing piece, or actually a yearning for God, or the ability to know that that is something that we need to be reaching out for at this point. So that is a key stage in any human's life. When you're going through puberty, your brain is then again growing at a massive speed. And at that time, you need comfort, you need security, you need, Mape that can talk to you about what you're going through, about what you're feeling, and direct you into the right direction. Because if you're feeling that same feeling and you go to school, that feeling of, I don't know where I belong, what is my identity, why am I here? And then you're going to school and spending your time with your friends, and teachers are telling you what their views and opinions are, and you're hearing the opinions of your peers. It's very likely that in that time where you're feeling unsure of yourself, that you end up latching onto other things. Maybe I'll feel better if I act more like my friends. Maybe I'll feel better if I look more like my friends. Maybe this is what I really need to do, and this is the path I need to go down. And that's a choice that we need to make as parents, to understand that that is such a milestone in a child's life, and where do they need to be in that time. So that's the cultural and spiritual connection that they lose by being at school. And this is not all of the time, this is a generalization, I suppose. The other thing is emotional dysregulation. So all of our children, whatever they're doing throughout the day, there are many times where they'll feel emotionally kind of lost, whether it's frustrated because they've lost a game, or frustrated because they've fallen out with a sibling. And at school, it's the same thing. A child could be upset because somebody said something nasty to them, or a teacher said something that's not quite sat right with them. It could be a million and one things that can make you feel emotionally not quite right. And the difference of being at school is there is nowhere for that emotion to go. You have to hold it inside you and stick with you until you get home. But the difference is when you're home educating, you can speak to your parent straight away. You can say, look, I'm feeling like this and I don't know why that is. And 9 times out of 10, the parent might know the exact solution to help you through that emotion. But just being there with them and sitting there and feeling that emotion with them while they're in the moment, and just waiting till it passes, is usually more than enough for them to feel better and crack on with whatever they need to get on with. So the next one isn't something I've experienced personally, but I think generally it's well accepted that SEND children, their needs are not being catered for the way they need to be catered for at school. So that's another one of the big reasons why we see a lot of home education, a lot of parents pulling children out of schools. So just quickly, can we have a quick show of hands of any of you that know a child that has struggled with any of these things, or if your own child is struggling with any of these things? Yeah, so that's quite a few hands. I think it's one of the things that we think about school and we think, yeah, we just have to accept these things. But I'm here to tell you that you don't really. So if by some miracle your child hasn't been through any of these things or hasn't experienced any of these things, there's a deeper level of things that happen by us sending our children to school that we might not realize. 1 second. Okay. And that is what happens to our children subconsciously when they're drip fed over years. So one of the main things you're taught at school is obedience training, which is that you follow rules regardless of what you want and how you feel. The indoctrination of views and opinions and political ideologies and cultural norms that don't align with Sikhi or family values and what we would want to raise our children as. Ego and competition become the focus of everything that a child does. It's all It's all about one-upmanship, basically. The whole point is that you want to basically feel superior over another. They learn to trust authority more than their own intuition. And intuition is so important ultimately in terms of what will lead us to God and creating that connection. So that's the loss of inner voice. We learn dependence. We learn to trust authority more than, our own intuition. I've been through that. It kills the self-directed learning and critical thinking that we innately are born with. And you're left with fear over freedom, which means that fear of failure is now your inner narrative. So you don't want to start anything new. You're afraid of putting yourself out there and doing something different because your narrative is, well, if I fail, then that's not going to be great, so I'm not even going to try that. We see creativity being suppressed, and we're taught that ultimately creativity isn't going to make you a career. It's not going to bring you enough money. It's not going to be a brilliant lifestyle for you. So don't go down that path ultimately. Just have it as a hobby on the side, even if that's an option. And there's a detachment from real life. So children learn about the world, but not through living in it and not through reality. And it's all about what's taught to you in a lesson, what you've read in a book, what you've seen in pictures. But the real way to experience life and be attached to that is by experiencing it and feeling it yourself. And that can't happen if you're sat in a classroom for most of your life, or your school life anyway. So schooling shapes our minds to mindlessly obey the system and the state, which is the polar opposite to what Sikhi actually teaches us. So if we look at what the Gurus taught us, the Gurus taught us to live with purpose, a purpose higher than grades and well-paid jobs, higher than anything we allow ourselves or our children to be conditioned to believe. Real education is freedom from conditioning and to be able to discern the truth, to be able to work out the truth for ourselves without being told what is right and wrong. So Sikhi teaches us that humility is needed as a trait before we realize Vaheguru, not one-upmanship. It's not about always trying to be the best person or the biggest person. It's about having humility and believing that there are people are better than we can be. So intuition versus external validation. Without intuition, how will we hear the yearning and cries of our soul? How will we know that that exists? If our basic stance is that we need external validation, we need people to say, yeah, you're very good. What you've done is good. Here's a good grade to show you your worth. That dumbs down our intuition, and we no longer feel what we need to feel to be able to grow. Awareness, not approval. We need to be aware of what is happening inside us and not acting for another's approval. And literally, time is of the essence. When we send our kids to school, and even when we think about our careers, we assume we have our whole life. We think that we're going to go through GCSEs, we're going to go to university, we're going to have a brilliant job, we're going to get married, have kids, and it's going to be a really long, wonderful life. But that's not always the case, and that cannot be guaranteed for anyone. So any time that we can spend in this life doing Nam, Bani, Bhakti, we need to use it for that. And another thing is cutting out external noise. So when you're not going to school, there is very little noise. There is very little of what somebody has said, what this is happening and that is happening and this is happening. There is none of that. It's all about listening to what is happening inside of you and acting on what you believe is important. If we look back, if we can imagine a time when we know the end is near and we look back, I am almost 100% sure that none of us would think, I'm glad I went to school, or I'm glad I got those grades, or glad I did that job. Guru Sahib has made us unique and made us stand out and non-conforming. That is a huge part of who we are. So for us to send our children somewhere every single day, just because everybody else does, and thinking that's the right thing to do, is really something that we need to reconsider and think about whether or not we want that for our children. And the answer might be yes, and that is totally fine, but it is at least something that we need to stop and think before we act. So this is a way in which schools have to operate to have a system that caters to so many children. They can't, take one child and look at the unique needs of that one child and, help that one child flourish. That system would just be down on its knees if it worked to that degree, or it would cost a lot of money. But let's look at what feeds into this. So there's two different ways of thinking here when we think about schooling and we think about Sikhi. The Western way of thinking, and you see this generally in schools, in the way that Western religions even operate, is very different to the way we think about Sikhi. So the Western way of thinking is very rules-based, kind of memorizing facts, obeying systems, and you having to prove your worth. And Sikhi is very much about experience, reflection, and realization, and knowing your own worth, regardless of grades and schooling or anything else that you've been through. The Western way believes in only which can be measured. So if I can see something, if I can measure it, if I can physically describe it, then it's real. But what Sikhi says is that God cannot be measured. God is above all of that. So how can those two ideologies exist in the same place, in the same brain, that I only believe in things that can be measured, that can be seen, and that I can factually see or analyze? And then we're saying at the same time, no, we believe in Waheguru that we can't measure, and we can never know the vastness of this. Those two things can't live in the same space at the same time. So those ideologies are contradictory. The Western way quite often promotes individual interest. Everything is about you working on yourself and growing individually as a person. Whereas Sikhi teaches us that everything, the whole existence is one. God is one, and inside everybody. There is only God. There is nothing else. There is no me trying to be better than you or you trying to be better than the next person. That doesn't exist because we're all the same thing. So the Western way trains our minds to believe to believe in controlling and intellectualizing everything. So I feel like I'm in control here. I am doing this speech. I have earned what I have to have the house that we have. I have raised my children the way that I have done everything. And intellectualizing is that, yeah, I will do this thing, I'll do this tick box thing, and then it's done. And I've made sense of it. Now I understand it. Now I can move forward with it. But Sikhi teaches us the complete opposite again. Is that it teaches us to surrender completely, that I don't exist. I can't do this on my own. I can give myself completely to Guru Sahib. And what Guru says is what happens, and what Guru says goes. In the Western world, there's no understanding of Pana Manana, there's no understanding of Hukam. That doesn't exist. So again, how can those two ideologies exist in the same person? It has to be either or. So in the Western way, again, we measure success by knowledge and by material gained. And in the Sikhi way, we measure growth by loss of duality. I no longer believe that I am separate to God. We are one and the same thing. And same with ego. The only way I can grow as a person is by shedding my ego and understanding that when ego is gone, that's when there is true peace. And the Western way creates followers of systems. Follow the law, follow the school system, follow your teacher, do as you're told. Whereas the Sikhi teaches us to seek the truth. What is the truth? And to follow that path. It might not be what everybody else is doing. It might not be, the right way to do things in accordance to everybody else. But if it's the truth, then it's what we should stand by. So I'm sure the question on everyone's mind now is that that's all well and good, but how do we then raise children that are successful on a worldly level? And how does home educating help with that? So one of the many things we gain outside of the schooling system is actually a greater depth of learning. There's an educational psychologist named Benjamin Bloom who studied how different teaching methods affect students' performance, and he discovered something really astonishing. The average student who was taught on a one-to-one basis performed better than 98% of students in a conventional classroom. And that's because of two main things. First of all, they had instant feedback of their learning. So if something went wrong, instantly they have the person next to them to tell them, that wasn't quite right, try again, let's try it this way. Or that was right, brilliant, keep going in that direction. So there was no waiting for teachers to mark papers, to get back to you after an exam. It was instant feedback, instant. And then there was the time versus mastery-based learning. So essentially what that is in schools you'll see time-based learning, where everything is based on time. So you will learn a subject for a year, and regardless of whether or not you have learnt that topic, the way that you're meant to learn it, you move on to the next year. There's no, hang on a second, you haven't understood that properly, let's go deeper into this. That doesn't exist. Even if we break that down onto a lesson by lesson basis, we have a math lesson that goes on for an hour. If you are really into that math lesson, and I know that sounds weird for school kids, but it does happen with home education kids, you're really enjoying that math lesson that you're doing, you've really got a grasp of this new theory that you understand and you want to learn more about it, and you really want to dig deep. But what happens is after an hour, the bell goes and you're ready for your art class or your next lesson. What that does is it never allows you to enter into a flow state. It never allows you to truly master what you're learning. And the mastery-based version is that you can spend as long as you want on any one subject or topic. If you decide today that I want to, I'll give you a good example actually. Recently, my children have been really excited about building fires. And I don't mean like, just with starting with a match or something. They wanted to start it from scratch without anything. They wanted to be able to, if they were out in the wilderness ever, they wanted to be able to just start a fire. So they literally spent about, I'd say, 2 weeks from the moment they got up to the time they were ready, had to come in to eat food, and only then would they come in. They were trying again and again and again to build these fires. They were using flint and steel. I mean, at points they had blisters on their hands, and I'm like, maybe you should stop now. Maybe you should just come inside, get warm a little bit. Like, no, we have to learn to do this. There were tears that they couldn't do it, but they carried on and they carried on. And by the end of it, all 3 of my older kids could start a fire in no time. And they're happy with themselves that they'll be able to master that skill. And that's just one of many examples. I mean, this last week has been chess. Chess has been the only thing that they talk about a day and night, literally. The books that they bought recently are all about chess. Everything is about chess. I want to be a grandmaster. I want to do this. I want to do that. And all the focus is on chess. And that's fine because they have the freedom to spend all their time to do that. And we know that if they want to do maths one day, they will spend all day doing maths. If they want to do something different, if it's Vajja, Tabla, Kirtan, whatever it is, they have the freedom to really, really get into a flow state with it, to dig deep, and to really understand what they're learning. So there's learning in a particular order isn't always necessary. So this is something we learn at school as well, that whatever you learn, you have to learn in order. So another example from my own life is that all our children learn how to read by themselves. And I mean, it's quite funny that by the age of 4, they could read books that were about this thick, but if you asked them to sing the alphabet in order, they wouldn't be able to do that for you. They wouldn't be able to tell you what order the alphabet went in, but they could read brilliant books. So learning doesn't always happen in a particular order, and we know that as adults, right? If we wanted to bake a cake or something, if I had to first learn the history of how to make a cake, then learn which ingredients work together and which ingredients don't work together, by that point I would be like, okay, I don't really want to make a cake anymore, and it would completely put me off. But what I would do if I wanted to do was go figure out the ingredients that I wanted or the cake that I wanted to make, and I would try it, and if it didn't work again, I would try again, and I would learn from there. And then if I wanted to know the history or anything about particular ingredients, I would work from that point. And that is actually how learning works, even in humans, in all humans, in children, sorry. But school can't do it that way because it would mean having a tailored way of teaching every single child, and that's not something that's possible. So another thing you'll see in home-educated children quite often is self-regulation. So when I started out thinking about home education and trying to work out if it was the right thing for my family or not, I spoke to many people about home education and what it meant and what the outcome was for their children and whether or not it was a good decision. And there's one thing that a lady said to me that stuck with me forever. And basically, she said, the strangest thing is that they look upon watching TV and studying for a degree as exactly the same thing. So there was no trying to persuade a child that, okay, that's enough TV for one day now, go study on your degree or go study for your exams. That didn't exist, because even the studying for their exam was something they wanted to do, or for the degree. That was something they wanted to do. It was their purpose, and it was something that excited them just as much as TV did, and it had their attention just as much as well. So they're completely self-regulated, and the internal motivation, the inner motivation they have to do everything cannot be recreated by another. So I can't put the motivation in my child to do anything the way that he can or she can for herself. So another thing that we see outside of the system is real world skills. So the very basic thing is that schools, in my opinion, are not preparing children for the ever-changing landscape in this age of AI. Schools are, it's still, you go to speak to your careers advisor, you still try to understand what career would be best for you, and schools are still pushing children down the line of, in 10 years' time or whatever, I want to be a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer. But we, in all honesty, have no idea if those vocations are still going to be around in that time. And there is no backup for that. There is nothing at all, because what's happening is that schools are teaching children to follow these particular rules and act in this particular way, and then also study for these vocations that most likely will not exist. But the difference we have with home education and learning real life skills is that they understand that things can change at the drop of a hat. So they understand adaptability. They can adapt to any situation. They understand change. They're comfortable with it. Things can change, and we might have to grow in a different way. We might have to learn something new. But because they have that internal motivation and they're not afraid of learning, they don't have that fear of failure. I am pretty confident that most homeschooled children or home educated children will find their way because they have the basic skills to do so. And they have the opportunity to explore creativity to the nth degree, which is something that every human needs, basically. Even when we as adults are not feeling good, or we're dealing with anxiety or depression, we're told to try walking in nature, or we're told to try painting or trying a new craft or something along these lines. These are basic things that bring joy to humans that we should value just as much as we do any part of education. And the other thing they don't prepare our children for is any kind of entrepreneurship, which again I think is going to be something really important for the future. How can you, without having a career, without having any particular path, let's say, that you've drawn out for yourself at school, would you be able to make money to sustain you and your family if you had to? Would you be able to do that? So the thing with you'll see in most home educated families is that because they are home educating children, they will also have usually a business that they are running, because it's something they can do alongside home education, and then that goes on and influences the children in doing that as well. And it is one sure way to make sure that they are covered in the future, no matter what changes. So the environment as well, when we are educating children at home, we choose the environment. We make sure the environment's calm. We know that the child feels safe, connected. And in that safety and connection, children don't just learn faster, they understand deeper, because they have the time to go at their own pace. And time is such an important factor and creates a powerful shift. Time itself creates a powerful shift in who our children will become. So let me just break that down for you. So here we have two pie charts. The one on the left basically shows school children. So away from parents 43% of the time. This chart includes things like obviously school, it takes into consideration after school activities, it takes into consideration screen time and other things that are done away from parents. And 38% of whether you're schooled or not schooled, percent of your time is sleeping. So if you look at the proportion of time that either of these children spend with their children is astonishing. This fact alone would have made me consider home education completely differently. The difference of time that you spend with your parents. If you are spending most of your time with somebody else, that is going to be your main influence. So Gabor Mate, most of you must have heard of him, is a leading physician who focuses on psychological effects of childhood development. And one of his major points is that children need deep emotional closeness more than they need any kind of academic success. Children are biologically wired to lean towards their parents in terms of the way they learn, to regulate emotions, and to develop identity through the closeness of their parents. So if children are only with their parents 19% of the time, who will they learn from? Who will regulate their emotions? And where does their identity develop from? So he also talks about peer attachment replacing parent attachment. So because the parents are not there and children are at school all the time, their peers are becoming their emotional support. So if you knew that your 12-year-old child was struggling with something emotionally, and he wasn't spending enough time with you as a parent to really discuss what his problem was, so he spoke to his 12-year-old friend, I can be pretty sure that the advice that 12-year-old friend is going to give my child is not going to be the same advice I would give him as a mother. And that's all we can expect from that 12-year-old. It's not because he's doing something bad or his emotions haven't developed himself to be able to then give advice to another child. So when we see this peer attachment, what we see is that this shifts a child into feeling insecurity, defiance, anxiety, and loss of direction. Because under no circumstances can a peer provide the same unconditional acceptance and guidance for a child that a parent can. So time and presence are literally non-negotiable when it comes to raising children. It's not just about quality. So it's not about, okay, we scheduled in a weekend away or a lunch date with our child, or we're going to take them on this wonderful holiday. It's not about scheduled time. It's about emotional availability. Are you there when they need you to help with their emotions all of the time, not just after school and weekends? So the modern schooling system undermines this parental attachment completely, and it creates an emotional void that children then have no choice but to fill with technology, social media, and peer dependence. The problem with this in Sikhi is that we learn that without deep attachment, a child's nervous system stays in a subtle state of anxiety all of the time. And from that state of anxiety, you can't learn, you can't focus, and you certainly can't kind of explore anything spiritually, because your core focus is trying to not feel that anxiety. It's only when a child feels secure in love that they can explore the world freely. If a child is fear-based, they can't explore anything, and their only goal is to try to feel safe. So if a child, let's say if a child that was securely attached to his parents and a child that was peer attached, and you gave them both the opportunity to go on a worldwide trip, the child that felt secure attached would be happy about that and would be excited for what was to come. Whereas the peer attached child would more often than not feel dread and fear because they don't feel safe in who they are in this moment stood here. So telling them to go and do something out there or something different is not something they want to understand or even try to explore. So home education at its best restores that natural bond between parents and creates a loving, safe, comfortable environment for children to learn and grow spiritually. Every hour that we spend with our children, it actually strengthens their sense of self, their confidence, and their capacity to know who they are. There's a huge misconception that I think is rife even in our culture to this day, and that's that if you send them away to school, they'll learn to stand on their own feet. That's how they will become confident, and that's how they will know who they are, by putting them out there, making them practice, telling people what we stand for and what we are. But the honest truth is the exact opposite happens. They need to be with their parents, and that's how they learn confidence and courage. Okay, so home ed for Sikh kids, and this is what it basically means, wrapping all of that up. They have emotional wellness, and this was the number one driver for us when we chose to home educate. When fear and anxiety and pressure are gone, we open up time, space for spiritual exploration. That is actually the number one reason we are here. We all consider school to be the most important thing for children of school age. But the honest truth is it's not. It is really not. We have just been conditioned to believe that ourselves, and that's why we believe it. And the funniest thing that I read in a book by a huge home ed advocate, John Holt, was that we are trusting our children in a system that has taught us that we cannot raise and educate our own children. When I heard that, something switched in me, and I just thought that is so true. Why would I put my children through that same system that makes you think you can't raise your own children? So focus and conviction. They have the time to focus, to listen to their intuition, to hear their yearning for God, and also being firm and steadfast in their beliefs. One thing I can tell you about every homeschool child I have come across, I mean literally every homeschool child, is they know what they think, and they will tell you exactly what they think, and they are confident, fully confident in what they believe, and they won't mince their words. So time, you get time back, time to spend on what really matters, time to do Simran, Path, Kirtan, Vichar, Santhya, just basic contemplation. And there's a real fearlessness about these children. They learn to question authority and not to blindly follow the crowd. And they're not afraid to say what they think and what they believe. So for me, the future of the Panth is home education. It's about remembering that education was never meant to belong to a system or a syllabus. It's about families and communities. Children were always made, and we were designed to be raised as families, not, the parents go off to work and the children go off to school. And by the end of the day, everyone's tired. We don't have time for connection. There isn't that space for everyone to grow together. And we as parents carry the responsibility to make sure that our children are strong and powerful and have an unwavering spirit. Our children are not just students, literally to get good grades and good jobs. That's not the main focus, even though we're taught to believe otherwise. So all I really ask is, in the same way that we search for the best schools and the best Ofsted rating, that we consider our homes as well, that we consider what we could teach our kids and what we have to offer them. Guru Nanak Dev Ji freed us from false institutions. So let's give our children the same spiritual freedom to learn, to question, and to realize who they are. And that, I believe, is how we can build a future Panth that is unshakable. So having gone through all the positives of home education and talking to you about all the brilliant stuff that happens, I have to be honest and tell you some of the realities as well. So time and patience is required. Patience in a huge amount, but time as well, in the sense that for our family, it's different in the sense that we have always home educated. So we have grown with our children, and as every child has come along, we have learned to grow and kind of manage more children and accept that as part of our life. And we know no other way, basically. It's always been like that. From the day our children were born, they've always been with us. They're here today, and until they choose otherwise, they will always be with us. So whether we're making food, whether we're going shopping, whether we're tidying up, whatever we are doing, we're usually all doing it together. And that's where the patience comes in as well. Sometimes we have to be patient with each other. We have to understand that we have different needs at different times, and we have to go with that. But when you are deregistering a child and a child has been at school before, there's a different requirement, because you need an adjustment period. You'd need an adjustment period for that child to de-school, which basically means to understand that those same restrictions are not applied on that child, that they don't have to conform in the same way. And that takes time. It takes time to shed that level of restriction and understanding. And it takes time for the parent to adjust to being emotionally, at least, switched on all of the time. So there is that period of adjustment does exist. So then another thing that can sometimes be an issue is financial adjustment. And in some families there is a sacrifice, and it was for us in the beginning. We chose to be a single income household when it could have been two, but because we chose to home educate and keep our children at home with us, it meant that one of us had to be at home with the children all of the time. And that was fine, that was what we chose to do at the time. But that doesn't have to always be the case. What we see a lot of families doing is they can opt to flexi school. So that means your child goes to school maybe 2 days a week and you home educate 3 days a week. So the balance is still there, where the influence is still with the parents and the family rather than with the school. Some families have the option to work from home. So when you are home educating and the children are doing their own self-directed learning, You find as a parent there's more than enough time to do your meetings or work if you need to, whether that's part-time or not. There are ways around it. And more often than not, like I mentioned earlier, what you will find is most home ed families will have businesses that run alongside their family in a flexible way that allow them to make an income, to earn money, as well as raise their children. And time goes on. As time goes on and your children get older, you realize that you are freer and freer and you have more and more time on your hands. And before you know it, your natural learning instinct kicks in. And you think, right, well, what could I do with my time now? As I have 2 home education friends who have just gone back into learning as in parents. One parent is 50 years old and she's decided to go back into understanding psychology, human psychology. She wants to be a psychologist for children and other parents as well. And there was another one that chose to, at this age, be a nurse. So these parents studied alongside their children. So the children were doing home education. The parents can study and learn what they wanted to do. And they were both growing in life at the same time. But again, you don't have to choose to go back into the school system. You could choose to start that business that you've always wanted to do. And you find that you have the time and the freedom now to do things like that. So it does take a bit of financial adjustment to be able to support your family in that time. But it's not something that can't be worked through or worked around. It just needs the conviction, really. So dealing with judgment and bureaucracy. The judgment thing's quite funny. We've heard some of the funniest comments. Honestly, we've heard some of the craziest comments from, but like me explaining to somebody that, oh yeah, the children have been to BJJ football and they're going somewhere else this afternoon, and the response is, oh really? So they leave the house? And it's like, yeah, they do sometimes. And then you hear things like, back 12 years ago when we decided to home educate, our friends and family some of them were really quite confused and baffled by our decision. So my Masi is a teacher, and she was absolutely against the decision. She couldn't understand why we wanted to take our children out of the schooling system or why we weren't going to send them there. And she thought we were doing them a huge disservice. But she went along with it, and every time she would see our kids, she would kind of, ask them the maths questions to see what level they're at, see if they understand, basic comprehension, and see if they knew what was happening. And slowly over the years, she would hand me the curriculum and say, why don't you just check if they're up to scratch and just see if they're with everyone else, the national average and things. And as the years went on and she saw them develop for herself, she held her hands up herself, and her words were that she's a total convert. She fully believes in home education, and she's actually an advocate for home education now. And she's totally impressed by these kids and what they've achieved, and not just by what they've achieved, but their general nature as well, and how they behave. It's very different to what you see with average schooled children. So there's less judgment now, because I think home education is becoming more and more understood. More and more families want to understand more and more families are realizing the benefits of it. So the next thing is finding rhythm as a family. Now, this is a tough one, because in some scenarios what can happen is you find a rhythm, everything works perfectly well for a good couple of months, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. Someone's decided they want to do something different, or it could be the parent that's going through a change and they're not feeling comfortable with the routine that you have, so something has to change. For example, something that's very real is parental overwhelm. Like for me, when I'm kind of home educating 4 children, there are often days where one child will say, oh, Mummy, can you just help me with this maths question? And someone will just say, can you just help me light this fire that I'm trying to do? And another one will say, look what I just did. And then we're toilet training our 3-year-old at the same time. And you're literally getting pulled in 4 different directions in one go. But those times are the time when you need to pull together and try to understand each other and realize that something's not right and things aren't working. So in that time, I know I can explain to my children, look, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed at the minute. So I will help you when I've just done this, and then after I've done this, I can do that, and then I need some time to myself. And because we work as a family and we have a rhythm that works together, they understand that. And sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes they don't feel like doing a particular thing that we have decided to do as a family, and we understand that, and we make space for that as well. So it's about working together, it's about understanding each other, and it's about realizing that these are the people in your lives for the next however many years, and we just work together and we make it work. So finding that balance can be difficult sometimes, because you have to learn to grow yourself and understand yourself before you can articulate it to somebody else. And then bring that change about. Oop. Oh, where have we gone? Okay. So before we go into the Q&A, there are a few common questions that we get asked all of the time. When I say all of the time, I'm so sure, we get asked it so often that I'm sure that it will be on the questions that Baji has as well. So I will just go through those with you, just one second. Okay, so the most asked question that we ever get is, but what about socialization? How do you socialize your kids? How do they meet other kids? How do you get them to understand, social cues? How do they engage with other kids or even other adults? So, what literally every home education parent will tell you is that not being able to socialize your children if you home educate is the biggest misconception that possibly exists around home education. Kids learn social skills and confidence from adults, from their parents. And what happens with home educated kids is that they spend most of their time with adults and around adults, so they learn real interactions and they see how people behave and interact with each other. And it's not around children who are bickering, who are arguing, who are behaving in ways that you actually wouldn't want to model to children. They get to choose who they spend their time with, so they don't have to meet the same children in the same class who they could have potentially been bullied by. They do as adults do. They choose who they spend time with. Yeah, I connected with that person. I like talking to that person. That person talks sense. I want to spend more time with that person. So they do that. Or I didn't like that person. I didn't get a positive vibe from them. I don't want to play with that person again. So they have that option day to day as adults would. So they have the most kind of real life experience of socialization that actually exists. And it's quite strange that people assume school is a place for socialization when the main thing that you're told is to be quiet, sit still and listen, unless you're in playtime, which is a very strict amount of time that you can play. And what home educated kids have is freedom to play as long as they need to for as long as they want. And sometimes a home educators park meet can last literally all day. It lasts until a child says, right, I'm ready to go home now. There are many, many studies that have been done on children that spend time with many children of their own age. So like a group of 6-year-olds or a group of 12-year-olds. And the result of all those studies is that is an actual stressor for children. It's not pleasant, it's not socialization, and it's not fun. It's actually stressful, and it doesn't help. So that's my answer to that one. Let's just go back one. Can they do GCSEs or go to university? So yeah, that's completely fine. They can do GCSEs and go to university. GCSEs they can do at home. In most scenarios they do. So the benefit is that you get to choose the exam board that your child sits the exams with. So for example, my eldest son will be sitting his computer science GCSE soon. And we get to choose the exam board in the sense that you can have a look at all the exam boards, what the syllabuses are, and which syllabus fits your son's or child's way of learning. And if you choose, like for example, we had a choice of an exam board that is fully written exam or an exam that includes a practical element to it. And because he loves coding and that's part of who he is, we got to choose that exam, basically tailored to his needs. So you can study for your GCSE exam at home, and then you just have to go and do your exam in an exam centre. And the beauty is that if you fail this GCSE exam, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't affect your A-levels. No one's going to tell you, right, because you failed that GCSE, now you can't sit this A-level. It actually doesn't work like that. You can sit that GCSE as many times as you like, and you can then go on to do the A-level that was required for that GCSE or that you wanted to go and do. Because so often in schools, it's very rigid, and I understand that it has to be because of the number of children that are going through the system. That if you don't pass these GCSEs in this time frame, you can't then go on to do your A-levels. And children are expected to sit, is it 9 GCSEs, I think, in the space of 2 years. But the beauty of home education is that we can sit our first couple of GCSEs when the child's 12. You can do a few more when they're 13. You can do a few more when they're 14, and you can stagger them across as many years as you like. So that takes away the stress, it takes away the pressure, and it takes away the fear in that as well. Do parents need to be teachers? So I spoke about that earlier. No, parents do not need to be teachers. They have to act more as facilitators and give the child opportunities and basically the resources that they need when they ask for it, or when you know that they need it. What about both parents working? So yeah, that is one of the challenges of home education when you do have two parents that have to work. But again, there are ways around it, in possibly working from home, doing flexi schooling, relying on other home educated families. So what you see a lot in home educated families is that one family will take your kids and somebody else's kids and do a potential lesson with them that everyone's interested in. And then that leaves the other two parents time to work and focus on whatever they need to do. And vice versa, they will swap the children around like that, because this is what you do is you build a community that you all kind of agree with on parenting standards and learning as well. So another question is, isn't this isolating? No, I would say it's the very opposite. In fact, it's freeing. It allows the children to be free to do what they want when they want. There's literally no restriction around them. And even for parents, we can plan trips anywhere around the world whenever we feel like it. There is no time frame for us that we have to be back by a specific time. There's no worries about fees or late fines from schools, and there is actually nothing like that we need to worry about. So in the entire of my life, I would say I now feel the freest I ever have. And I can say the same for my children, but they know no different. They don't know what it's like to be confined to a school and times and rules in that sense. So they're all the general questions that I had to answer. We can go to the question and answers that came in from the anonymous questions if you want.
You can open the so-called audience as well.
Sorry?
The audience want to ask me. Like,
oh, right, okay. Yeah, so are there any questions the audience want to ask? Yep.
So you said about how about the attachment with your parents, like spending more time with them. Let's say like afterwards when you do go to university, wouldn't that affect if you're too attached with mum and dad and they wouldn't want to?
Yeah. Okay, so that's a great question. So the question was, if the focus is on attachment, a child's attachment with the parent, when they go to university, wouldn't they find it difficult then to detach from their parent? So again, I can see why you would think that, but what happens is that in the time that a child's attached to their parents in their early years, going through their tween ages and teenage, from the attachment with their parents, they grow confidence, they grow security, and they grow a real sense of independence and who they are in their own space. So when they do get to the ages of 18, 19, there's a natural developmental phase where they move away from their parents and they look to the outside world for their growth now. Because it's almost like we've learned everything we can learn from our parents now. Now we need to go out into the world and be independent and see what else is out there, essentially, and grow as independent humans for ourselves. So what it actually does is sets them up in a more positive way, because they are rooted in such stable, they're coming from such a stable place, basically. Whereas children that never have that secure attachment with their parents are always searching for it, and they're always trying to find that safe space that they've never actually had. That's okay. Yep. Hanji, listen.
Thanks, Benji. That's been really insightful, because I've just started homeschooling my daughter.
Okay.
So really appreciate what you're doing.
That's brilliant.
What I wanted to know is the exam centres, the GCSE exam centres. I've heard the Leicester ones are a bit unreliable. I wasn't sure. Some people are saying go to Nottingham, go to Coventry. So I was a bit unsure of where to go to. And I found Alpha tutorials.
Right.
And I believe that is it Montessori school or not? Montessori school. They do some GCSEs as well as certain exam boards. I just wanted to know what your experience was around GCSE exams and where to sit them.
Okay. So that question was about GCSE exams and which exam centres are best to sit at. So I don't have much experience of exam boards in Leicester. I'm actually from Milton Keynes. So we are, so the exam centres there are well known to home educated students, and from what I know, they are quite reliable. What I would say is just do your research, look into all of the exam centres individually, and possibly speak to other home ed families in Leicester that have already sat GCSEs. I think there's a UK-wide group on Facebook about home ed people that are wanting to sit GCSEs. So if you could possibly post a question on there and ask them if anybody's sat an exam, GCSE exam in Leicester, and which exam board they would recommend, exam centre they would recommend, and I'm sure you'd get some good answers with that.
I did meet Nafrit there.
Yeah.
She was really helpful. She told me about WhatsApp groups I could join, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
And I've tried to join the Facebook group, but they haven't quite accepted me.
Right, okay.
Sorry, thank you. So yeah, it was great to meet with Navpreet, who's going to put me in touch with a WhatsApp group. So I'll ask on there.
Okay,
so,
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's really good to
Thank
hear.
you.
No problem. Are there any more questions from Hanji?
So when you homeschool kids, obviously the kids, thank you. When you homeschool kids, the kids are then deciding what they want to learn, how they want to learn it, and how long they want to learn it for. I understand you said them being under pressure at school and, schools teaching them conformity. But when they grow up and they go into professional world, then they have to then adhere to the policies and procedures of the employer. They have to still meet the targets or deadlines, or they have to conform to the employer's rules and regulations. How do you think then the child will deal with that, because they have not done that all their learning life?
Yeah. Again, that's a very, very good question. So basically, when you start out your home education journey, I would say the biggest thing to do is take some time out to understand what you think the end goal might be. And if the end goal is to have children that are working for somebody else, and you want them to have a good job, and you understand that they are going to be in that type of environment, then you can taper your home education journey towards that. So you can understand what they will need for that, and you can add that into your version of home education. So in all of the families that we know that home education have helped through the process, there are no two families that do home education exactly the same. Every single family does it differently according to what they want to achieve and what their child needs. So yeah, so even in that scenario, your children might go into jobs and might be working for somebody else. When they do reach that age and that understanding of, this is my goal now, I am working here because I want to earn a living, and they understand inside of themselves why they're doing it, they will have the purpose then to understand what is asked of them, what is required of them, and then they will be able to do that. Because again, as I was saying to Benji over there, is that what happens with home educated children is that you are raising them to understand and to be adaptable and to be comfortable with change. So they will know that now I'm doing this, so I need to learn this, and I'm comfortable with doing that because that's what I've learned in this process. It's a bit of a misconception to think to be able to follow rules, you have to learn how to follow rules. We know that it's part of nature, really. It's an innate thing that if you want to do something, you want to achieve something, you will do whatever you need to do to make sure that happens.
Because when they are little, you don't really know what they are going to become or work as or work for. So to be able to then give them, those skills, or, you want them to learn that discipline, and you want them to learn how to follow rules and regulations and procedures. But then aren't we then doing the same things as schools are doing, which is teaching them to conform with things?
I think it's different in the sense that you or I wouldn't, as if I wanted them, if my goal was to one day have them in a job, or even let's say Sikhi, you can say there is an element of following rules and conforming and everything else in Sikhi. It doesn't mean that they won't know how to do that. It just means they won't do it if they don't believe that it's true to them and what they believe in. So they won't do it just because somebody has told them to do it. They will do it because I need to listen to what this person is saying and do what this person is saying because they're going to pay me at the end of the month. So I have a vested interest in listening to this. Whereas asking a child to blindly follow and not understanding the purpose of what's happening here, that's a whole different ballgame. So like even when it comes to Sikhi, because they feel that love and they want that connection with God by themselves, they will find it so easy to follow those rules. They won't be like rules, they will be like something beautiful that they get to do. Like you could argue that GCSE is the same thing, that they have to learn these things and then they have to sit the exam.
Yeah.
But the way that it's happened in our house is that because my son loves coding and computer science to such a degree, he's learned everything there is to learn about it. I mean, I'll share an instance with you that he's learned it to such a degree that he's surpassed my knowledge because I know nothing about that, but also surpassed my husband's knowledge, who knew quite a lot about that in that field. So we thought, okay, let's get him a tutor now. Let's get him somebody that can teach him the next level. So we went through many tutors before we found someone that we thought was right for him. And this tutor has studied computer science at GCSE level, at degree level, and he also had a job. And a few weeks into teaching my son, he rang my husband and he said, I'm really sorry, but I need to be honest with you. I feel bad taking your money because he knows more than I do. And the way that he is learning, not just what he's learning, but the way that he is learning, he's doing better than anything I could do for him. So once he's done all that, then he has decided, collectively we have decided, you might as well sit the GCSE. It's not going to take much more effort. But what he now has to do, now he has to fit into the rules of learning the exact phraseology, the exact way to answer those specific questions to then pass the exam. So when a child needs to do that, they have the ability to. So home education provides them with the skills to be able to do anything. So just because they haven't been in the school system doesn't mean that they won't be able to follow rules. They will if they want to, basically.
Thank you.
That's okay, Benji.
Just wanted to add to Benji's question.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
So we do home education as well.
Yeah.
2 साल हो गए.
Hanji.
And even we were talking to end goal ki hai gaya. So what's the reason we are actually sending our kids to school, the college, the university? Because I went to university myself, and the result was end of the university. I ended up doing my own business anyway. So we always, me and Masingani, we were always talking. What's the main reason for us to send our kids to school on all that university? And the answer is so they can earn, so they can obviously parivar, grihsthi jeevan, that sort of thing. And that's the nichod of it, if you want to call it that. So they can earn. But the reality is there are other ways of earning that money. You don't have to follow that path. And obviously with this AI, recently make the article Sky News da si mere kol hega, I think, and they've listed the top 20 areas that the jobs which will disappear over time because of AI, and 20 that will not get affected, and I've got that link for that, and it's quite interesting to see that list. And
but then I'm conscious of the fact that not all kids might have those entrepreneurial skills, and they might not want to be a business owner. They might quite happy want to be an employee where they just do Monday to Friday 9 to 5, and they don't have that extra stress, and don't want to have that extra, input into, in their weekends or holidays or whatever. So it's just, as a parent, you would want to equip your child with skills to be able to do both, either or, so they can do.
They can choose which path they want to follow in the yeah, of course,
rather than you choose for them to say that I'm going to raise you up as an entrepreneur and not as an employee for another organization, or vice versa.
एक चीज़ होर भी हैगी अब मैं जिथे तक हुण मैनूं एग्जैक्टली सोर्स नहीं पता कि आई थिंक साडे गुरबाणी विच या किथे आउंदी है कि ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਖੇਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਫਾਰਮਿੰਗ ਫਿਰ ਸੈਕੰਡ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਕਰਨਾ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਥਰਡ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ EMPLOYEE ਆਉਂਦਾ ਆ So अगर if you ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਆ then it's and we need to think that way as well.
Yeah. No, that's definitely. I mean, like I said, the best thing is being self-reliant and having your own business. But if your child is not good at that, then you need
Of course,
to have a
you need a
fallback
backup plan. Anji,
Yeah.
definitely. Anji.
So, thank you.
No.
Let's move on to the online questions now. Maybe, yeah?
Okay, we're just going to move on to the online questions. So I think the top question we answered, I think, in a lot of detail. Can the question be live streamed? Do you have a plan for the whole academic year? If so, how? Okay, so we don't divide our time in terms of an academic year and holidays and half term, and we don't divide our time like that. So what we will do is at the beginning of the year, we will sit down with our kids, we will all sit down together, and we will ask them what they want to learn and what they want to achieve throughout this year. Like we do as well as adults, you know, what are our goals for this year? What are we hoping to achieve? And then we will look at the bigger picture of what they want to do or what they want to achieve in life. We'll break that down monthly, weekly. We'll break that down into the lessons that they do, the extracurricular activities that they choose to do, and we follow their lead on it completely, really. If there's something that we think they should do that they might not have mentioned, we'll explain the reason why we think that's a good option for them to do, and ultimately leave it for them to choose whether or not that's right or wrong for them. And more often than not, they will make that decision. So let's say, for example, they want to learn maths for a particular reason because it helps them towards, coding, or helps them towards setting up a business that they're interested in doing, or building an app that they want to do. They'll understand, okay, so I want to do maths, right, okay, so I'm going to use this program and that's going to help me get to this level of maths, and then that will help me then go on to do this other thing that I need to and really want to do. So then they will, like for instance, we use Maths Watch, a software that they use to help them through maths. Sometimes they go through videos of that. Some days they feel like not doing it at all. And either of those scenarios is fine, long as by the end of the year we can see how far they've got and what they have done, and even throughout stages in the year. But what it doesn't mean is that we stick to the school timetable, basically. We might go on holiday for months at a time, or we might decide to do something completely different, or our time just isn't divided in the normal school way. But we do have a general idea of what we want to achieve and what the children want to achieve throughout the year, and we follow that through, basically. So it's quite high level and quite flexible, really. So how do we manage different age ranges? Yes, in some scenarios this can be really difficult because, as I've said, we've got a 12-year-old and all the way through to a 3-year-old. So the things the 3-year-old is interested in, definitely not what the 12-year-old is interested in. But one example I can give you is, so all of the kids are interested in Harry Potter, for example. And if we are, if let's say one of the children might have a goal that they want to improve their handwriting, or that they might want to be able to sit their English GCSE by the end of the year because it helps them prepare for being a writer, maybe, or something that they want to do in the future. What we will do is we will take something like Harry Potter that they're all interested in, and we will make sure that the work that they do is age appropriate. So and I call it work, but my children would call it like a fun activity that they have to do, basically. So the 12-year-old's activity on Harry Potter will be very different to the colouring sheet or something, joining up letters, that my 3-year-old is doing, but it's all based on the same subject. So that's one example. Or if they're even doing maths, they're all doing maths at different stages, but they could all potentially be doing it at the same time. So maths for my 3-year-old, could look like basic number formation and understanding how numbers work together, and for my 12-year-old, he's working towards GCSE maths. So it's like completely different age range, but they're sometimes doing it all at the same times, and sometimes they're not, and that's completely fine. It's just like individual people working on individual goals at different times. And because they're self-directed, what that means is they are able to go and search for answers themselves. They can come to us when they need a bit of emotional support. If they need any guidance or facilitation, we can be there to help that. But what you'll find is in most home education scenarios is that you don't, it's not like school, basically. You don't need a teacher to sit there and explain everything to you. It just doesn't work like that, because the one-to-one time you have with that child, even if it's 5 minutes, is way more than what you would get in a school environment. So they learn much faster in that scenario. Do you have tutors? No, we don't have tutors. And if I was to offer my advice, I would say that you don't really need tutors, because it's an innate thing to learn, and it's something that every human being wants to do. Even if you think about what you want to do with your free time, there'll always be something you want to learn, or something you want to understand deeper, or something you want to read about. There's always something. And children are like that even more than we are as adults. So if they need to understand something, with self-directed learning, they have the ability to go out there and figure out whatever it is they need to learn and to understand that. But if you feel like it's something that is out of your capability and something you feel like somebody else could offer your child more in that scenario and help them learn, then by all means, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having tutors and helping progress your child's understanding in that sense. But I firmly believe that children are very capable of learning themselves. Do you cover the curriculum? No, we personally don't cover the national curriculum. We never have. So I don't know in terms of where the children fare in terms of their age groups and what other children are doing at their age. What we do know is that obviously at the age of 16, I think it is, you do your GCSEs, and they're well on the way to being at that level, and they are doing the subjects that they want to do. They understand what they want to do in the future. So with all of our children, business or entrepreneurship is what they want to go to. And it's mainly because that's all they've seen and that's what they know from us and what we do in our household, to the point that when they see a new family, the question is, okay, so what business do you do? It doesn't occur to them that you might be working for somebody else or that you might have a job. That's an alien concept, really, to some degree. How do you socialize the kids? So I think we answered this already, so we'll go past that one. Okay, so do you worry how the children will live in society when they're older? No, I don't worry about this at all, because I think, I know that home-educated children are very, very well in terms of being able to adapt, to be comfortable with change, and the ability to learn whatever they need in the moment that they need to learn it. So they have the freedom, they have the kind of emotional stability to be able to do that, rather than not as teachers. And if we can just make sure that the environment is right and that they have access to resources that they need when they need it, then they don't need a teacher. And that when they have complex topics, they are more than equipped to learn that for themselves. And I understand that sounds like quite a strange thing coming from a schooling background like I have been through myself. And if someone else told me that, in all honesty, I'd find that hard to believe. And the only reason I can say that with so much conviction it happened in reality, and not just with my own kids, with many, many home education families. So I hope that answers that question. What do you see your children doing in the future? That's an interesting one, isn't it? At the moment, my children are 12, 11, 8 and 3. So it's very difficult to know exactly in the future or have a very kind of laid out plan for them. But I do know that they will be self-sufficient, that they will have inner motivation to do the things that they need to want to do, and they will be emotionally stable. And that's going by the environment that they've been raised in. But in terms of careers, I can't see them going into any particular career per se. I think what they would most potentially do is have some kind of entrepreneurial kind of flair around whatever they're really interested in. I don't know how that links to the particular subjects that they're really excited about, but I'm sure that through the conversations that we've already had and the ideas that they already have and the things that they want to do, that will be the thing that they go into. I think we've answered the tutors question. What does your school day look like? So our school day, every day can look very different. We don't follow a rigid routine. We are very flexible because on some days the children will want to do something really structured and learning based or academic based, and other days they might choose to do something completely different, like fires in the back garden. So we don't have a specific structure that we follow every day, apart from your basic, morning routine and lunch routine and dinner routine and bedtime routine. That's the basic underlying routine we follow. In terms of what they do outside of those hours is up to them, and we are there by their side the whole time, basically. They very often have home ed meet-up days where they meet other children that are home educated. They meet family and friends quite regularly. So that is generally the structure that we have. But I just want to dig into this question a bit deeper, because I feel that every time somebody asks me that what does your school day look like, is that you're potentially trying to understand how would I structure my school day, or how would I structure my day with my children. And I'll say again what I said earlier, is that we have come across many, many home educating families, some that we have supported through the process, some that we have learned from. And the one thing that I can tell you is that there is no family that I have seen, zero families that both home educate in exactly the same way. They all have their own way of doing it, they all have their own things that they find really important, and they all fall in their own routine. Even if they start off with, right, we are going to do maths in the morning, we're going to do science in the afternoon, we're going to do this. Eventually what will happen is, and this happens with most families, is they start this way, then they realize, my child's not really enjoying this. This isn't really how we wanted to home educate, or this isn't quite right. And then they relax a little bit. And then, you go towards more of an unschooled view, of which is more child-led, and you decide what the child wants to do. And eventually some like us settle in the middle. We do some structured stuff, and we do some stuff that is completely free flow. So where were we? What resources do you use to support? So we rely heavily on books of all sorts, books of everything that you can think of. There are loads and loads of videos on YouTube. They learn things from there sometimes. What else we use? We use certain programs to help teach specific topics like MathsWatch, thank you, and stuff like science. There are wonderful lessons on Facebook, actually, run by a home educating mum, and she runs science lessons completely for free, GCSE level maths. And the experiments that she sets up to help you understand this is completely like home-based, so stuff you can find in your kitchen. So you can run practical experiments in your own kitchen with stuff that you have every day at home, and you can learn the science through there. And students have done very well in physics, biology, chemistry, GCSE, just from her lessons, and not having a tutor or anything like that. And that's completely free as well. So that's some of the resources that we use. The school bill. Okay, I've got a lot of thoughts on this one. I think this is a whole talk on its own, but very high level. So basically, it's a bill that is changing how home education works, in the sense that, so there's things like, at the minute you can choose to home educate your child, and that's fine. No one can stop you doing that unless they have any special needs. But in the future, if the bill goes ahead, then there's things like you have to ask for permission to be able to home educate your own child. So if you are considering home education anytime in the near future, it might be a good idea to do it before this law comes in, if it comes in. The law is also stating stuff like home educated families will have to declare every lesson that you go to. So if you're learning tabla, you have to declare that, and then that tabla teacher could potentially be Ofsted checked, and also has to give his name and address, and it has to be vetted and checked. So it's a worry for home educated families, because what that could mean is that Punjabi classes and tabla classes and all this stuff are now shut off to home educated children, because the bureaucracy around it is just something that they're not going to want to entertain. There's quite a few things like that. There's the unique identifier that they want to introduce for all children, which is a massive invasion of privacy. So my thoughts are that I hope it doesn't go through. It's currently, I think, in the House of Lords, going through a phase where basically it's being checked over, it's being discussed, and when the peers look through this, so they are not aligned with any particular political party, so they don't benefit from it either way. So they will look through it, they'll question it, poke holes in it, and hopefully water it down to a huge amount so it doesn't impact us as negatively as it potentially could. And ultimately, it's up to us how we choose to let that affect our home educating journey, but at the minute I'm quite hopeful that it will get watered down as it goes through the Houses of Parliament. Okay, so I want to do homeschooling. How can I convince my parents? So I understood this question to mean that an adult wants to home educate their child, but they're not sure about convincing their parents, so the child's grandparents. And that is a really difficult thing because for the older generation that have come here, from India, and the only thing that they knew was get a good education, work hard, get a good job, be stable, get a job, work hard, and that's their understanding. So if we say to them now that, yeah, we know that you've put us through school and you've worked really hard to get us the jobs that we've got, now we're not going to send our children to school. It's hard for them to understand that, because for them, they see that that's where all the stability that you have has come from. But it's because of the hard work that they've put into it and the traumas that they've had to deal with. We're in a position now where we feel safer here, and we can now step back a second and have a look at the value of everything and reassess our situation and move forward from that point. But that is a difficult journey to explain sometimes to the older generation that have worked so hard to get their children into the education system and through it as well. So in terms of how to convince your parents, I would say speak to them about what happens at schools, speak to them and understand that schools are not actually as they used to be. They're not the same thing. School now compared to what it was when I went is very different. Not in terms of what's being taught, but the culture there is very different. And I don't think any grandparent or parent that knew that, that knew that would say, no, still send your kids to school, you have to do that. So I think whether you are a child and you want to be home educated and you're asking me how to convince your parent, it's help your parent see what is happening at school and what it is that you want to achieve at home and how they can help you do that. And it's through that clarity that could potentially help someone change their mind. If they have all the knowledge and they have all the understanding there, they'll be better equipped to make a better decision, basically. So I don't have any role models in particular that I kind of look up to when I think about home education or children that have graduated. But there are many children that we have seen in home ed communities that go on to finish university degrees, that go on to do amazing things with their lives, things that sometimes are so far outside of the box that our conditioned minds don't even begin to think about. But they have no problem in terms of being accepted, because I can see why these questions arise, because it seems like such an alien thing to have children not go to school, because we have been conditioned so kind of badly to believe that that's the only direction that you can go in. I mean, it's crazy how many people I come across that don't even know that home education is an option. It's not even something that has been thought about or considered or even know that exists, because although it's illegal, it's not promoted and it's not given as a choice on when you choose your schools to send your kids to. Home isn't an option there, which it should be. So then, it's assumed that what you're doing is really alien. And if you're doing something alien, then these children that you're putting through this alien system are going to be weird, surely. And I mean, I've actually had someone ask me that to my face, that, do you think all home educated kids are a bit weird? And the answer is no. But you wouldn't see a difference if you were to go to an office block, let's say, and if I said to you, pick out the adult here that was home educated, there would be no way of knowing. They don't act different or walk different, or there's no difference. The only thing I could say is they will be probably more confident, they will probably have more conviction in their views and opinions, and they'll be less bothered about what people around them think. So I don't think acceptance is an issue. Okay, so did your children go to nursery or preschool? If yes, why? If not, why? What are the cons of homeschooling and the pros? So I think I've been through the pros and cons extensively. And in terms of nursery and preschool, no, our children didn't go to nursery or preschool. and that's again because of things that we have discussed in the talk, is because especially at the young age, especially between the ages of 1 to 3, that attachment to a parent, and even more so to a mother, is so important for a child's neurological development. From that young age, they need that parental attachment. And when you take your child to school for the first time, or to nursery at the first time, you know if it was the right thing to do, because the child would say, great, see you later. But no child does that. More often than not, the child will be crying and doesn't understand, why are you leaving me here with these strangers? Why would you do that to me? What have I done? And, and the mother, as a mother, your gut instinct is, I don't feel good about this. I don't really want to leave my child here. But it's the conditioning that makes you think, no, this is what you're supposed to do at this age. You're supposed to leave your child on their own with this person that is essentially a stranger. So it's really important that as parents, we listen to our gut instinct, especially mothers. A mother's gut instinct cannot be replaced by anything. And that is my why. That is essentially my why I haven't taken them to nursery or preschool, because I couldn't actually bring myself to do it. It didn't feel right to do that to them, and it's not something that sat comfortably with me, and I have never been able to just go along with something that I'm not comfortable with. What's the biggest difference you've seen in the mindset between home educated? Okay, so what are the biggest differences you've seen in the mindset between home-educated children and those in mainstream schools? Okay, so I think we've spoken about this a lot as well, but I'll just summarize it quickly. Home-educated children, simply because they have a secure attachment to their parents, they have a safe, connected environment in which they feel comfortable most of the time, all of the time. They build confidence, they build kind of this confidence, I'd say confidence in themselves, and they know who they are, and they're comfortable with who they are because they have nobody questioning it. They have nobody questioning, why do you wear that? Why are you doing that? Why do you look like that? They have nobody questioning that. They are fully accepted for who they are all of the time. Even that includes quirks, includes whatever is a part of that. They are fully accepted all of the time. And that can only lead to confidence and to being fully secure in who you are as a human being, until you get to a point where you no longer need that parental attachment because you're so sure of who you are. So that's one difference that I see between home educated and mainstream school kids. Mainstream school kids, from what I have seen, is that they're generally quite unsure of themselves in terms of who they are and how to act and what to be, because quite often at home they're being told they are something else, and we are this and we do this and this is what we believe. And like I showed you, the Western way and the Sikhi way, then they're going to school and being taught the actual complete opposite of how to think and how to believe and how to behave and how to look. So that level of kind of controversy in your own mind and not quite sure what you should be and which side you should go for, what you should accept of yourself, can be really confusing. So that then goes on to create insecurity, not quite being sure, and defiance, and all these things in a school child. And another thing that I hear a lot from home-educated parents is, and something that I haven't quite experienced myself yet, but we're on the verge of it, is that most schooled children, the parents of, will say when they get to teenagers, it is so hard. They don't listen, they do their own thing, they're just arguing with me all of the time, their emotions are all over the place, and I don't know what to do, I can't actually cope with them as teenagers. But home-educated parents won't say that, because they don't see that. Their children, or more often than not, they don't have the same emotional ups and downs. They don't have the same level of defiance. I mean, they still get to that developmental age where they want to stand on their own 2 feet. They want autonomy and they want to be able to navigate their own life, which is fine. And I would want that for any child or any teenager that is growing up to be an adult. There has to be a transition phase into that. But for the arguments and the emotional ups and downs and everything else, most home-educated children don't go through that because they are rooted in a securely attached environment, and they don't feel so unsure of themselves. And when they do have that feeling inside of not being sure of who they are, they have parents to guide them, and they know they're being guided in a loving and positive way and towards the right direction, rather than being at school and having peers guiding them, which essentially can add to the confusion. So that, I'd say, is one of the biggest differences between the two. How do families make sure their children will still develop social skills and confidence outside of the school setting? I think we've addressed that, Hannah. Are there community-led Sikh home education networks in the UK or online? Yeah, there are. So we run the only one that we know of. It's called Family of Sikhs. We have a WhatsApp group we run a group where you can talk about the fact that you're considering home education. So any questions you might have, you can ask families that are already home educating what their experiences have. We have a book club that we run monthly. So we read books that help us with home education, help us with parenting and understand children and what they're going through, and help us grow as parents as well at the same time. We do regular meetups, so the Sikh home ed children get to meet together, and they get to play together, which is an absolutely wonderful thing. I love it as much as my kids do. Get to meet the parents as well, and it's just a really nice thing. And we are on Instagram as well. We're fairly new to this, I'd say, but it's growing fairly rapidly. And so if you want to join either of those things, we will have QR codes available at the end. How do you find a balance between being too strict with your kids and giving them too much freedom, especially in this day and age? Because what we tend to see is that in Sikh households, excessive strictness from parents can lead to children to rebel or drift away from Sikhi when they are exposed to it, to broader Galjuk society. Okay, so there are a lot of elements that we've already spoken about that lead into this, and it's not just one thing. So what I find a lot about these types of questions is that parents will sometimes kind of wait till a child got to a teenage age and say, my God, my child wants to, I don't know, cut their hair and I don't know why. So, what should I do now? And at that point, it's really difficult to say, okay, just say this to your child, or just do this, or just do that. Because it's years of conditioning, it's years of thinking, it's years of kind of being led down a different path that has led to this outcome. So it's not as straightforward as let's just have this discussion with this child and this child will change his mind. It's not how it works. So from the very beginning, if your learning style is different, if your learning style is that you do what you love and you love it completely and you do it to the fullest extent, and when an opportunity arises for spiritual exploration or growth, like when a child is going through those tween and teen years, when they're asking questions like, what is life about? Why am I here? Surely my life is not just about waking up in the morning, doing stuff and then just going back to bed again. And that is when you sit down and you speak with that child and you go through Gurbani and explain to the child, this is why you're here. This is what we're meant to be doing. This is the purpose of our life. School is just something on the side that you have to do. So let's do that quickly and get that ticked off, because that's not the important bit. The important bit is realizing why you're here, understanding, and that yearning that you're feeling, and that hole that you're feeling inside is to be filled with Gurbani, is to be filled with Sikhi, is to be filled with that pyar. And once at that age, and in terms of what psychologists talk about in child development, whatever a child kind of learns at that age and grows their synapses in terms of brain connections at that point is something that will stick with them forever. Even if they then question at some point their identity later in life, or they come across something that makes them question what they think, they will always have those pathways, and they will always kind of come back to that. And because they have done it from within, as in their own understanding of their own feeling, not because of something they have been told to do, they will again be far more steadfast and have greater conviction in any decisions they make around that. But it has to be something a child wants and understands the value of. If it's something that they are just told to do, wake up and do this part, do this, make sure you do this, you should believe this and you should do that, that is difficult to get anybody to fully buy into something that's taught in that way. What inspired you to start home educating your children? It's a bit of a long one, and there's many stages in my life where I thought this. The first one would have to, I think when I was in about year 7 or 8 at high school. I vividly remember my dad dropping me off at school, and it was cold, and I'm walking into the next lesson I have to go into. And I just remember thinking, I just wouldn't do this to my kids. I just wouldn't make my kids go to school every day, to sit with people, to learn stuff that they don't really want to learn potentially, and when they could be doing so much more at home. I mean, for me, I just love spending time with my nanny, and she is the most inspiring person to me, and the love that she has for God, I haven't seen in another human, and I find that so inspiring, and I loved to hear her stories, and I loved the way that she made me feel ultimately. And if I had a choice of going to school or spending time with her and understanding things, it would never be school, never. That was just something that I had to do. And even my nanny would say to me, if you don't want to go today, just leave it, you don't have to, it's okay. So I think to me that was music to my ears, but obviously my parents had a different view on that. So that time passed, and I mean, I had no particular problems at school. My husband and I both went to private schools, been through university, been through the whole thing. I don't remember a particular time being bullied or having a negative experience per se. But then I remember another time, I think I must have been in my early 20s, and I went with my Massey to drop her daughter off at nursery for the first time. She was 3 years old. And I can see my Massey's really struggling. I can see her daughter's really struggling, and they're crying, and neither of them want to do this. And I can just feel that moment was absolutely gut-wrenching to watch. And as soon as she left her and we turned around, I remember saying to my Massey that's it now. Like, she's 3 years old, and she's gone into this system, and the next time that she'll be out of the system, she'll be like 22 years old. And that's the last time you will be able to spend time with her freely as much as you want to. Now it's only evenings, weekends, and holidays, 6-week holidays. That's the most time you'll ever get to spend with her again. And I just couldn't do that. It's not something I could do. And I mean, you see these memes on Instagram and stuff that you only have 18 summers with your children, and it's such a short space of time. It's such a short space of time that they just need you to help them, to make them feel secure, to give them the grounding that they need. It's if you think about the amount of time you spend with your child and the amount of time your child is going to spend the rest of their lives, it's literally so I think, I mean, I read many books before we came to something that worked for us as a family, and that was that get the children to join in, basically. But everyone chips in, and if everyone were everything done, basically. And there are all of that in terms of doing that stuff. It's not a problem, and everyone gets through it. And again, it's part of having your family rhythm and learning what works. These days are mine, and alternately, we'll have the kids and the other person will be working. And if for whatever reason someone's feeling overwhelmed with the kids or has extra work to do, we just shift around and we work together, and again, we just make it work. So it can seem like a really daunting thing. It can seem like something that's huge, but with most things, once you get started, you find your way. Once you start doing it, you work a way out of how to do it, and it just works. And the main thing I always find with everything is just getting started. Just jump in, commit to it, and before you know it, you'll have found a rhythm, and it'll be working for you and your family.
Yeah, but I think if we leave
For the question and answer now, if you have any more questions, WhatsApp group or our Instagram, and especially on WhatsApp, community there, and we have meetups where you can come and join in person and ask questions, and kids can play with kids, and it's just a nice experience for everyone. So yeah, if there's anything else on the matter, then feel free to join our groups, and we can take it from there. Okay, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Big thank you to Benji for coming to the talk. We all learned something from here, including myself. So again, really thank you, big thank you. Next week will be by Maninder Singh Ji from Canada to the talk about sacrifice and sovereignty next Monday. So may everyone please attend that. And chips and beans, langar is here. It may have grown cold, but is what it is. The talk was worth it. ठीक है जी. वाहिगुरू जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरू जी